My name is Warren Delaney, and I doubt anyone reading this will recognize it. That's the thing about people like me. We tend to disappear before anyone realizes we were ever there. We're the steady shadows behind the spotlight. The husbands who never raise their voices. The ones who remember birthdays, pick up dry cleaning, fill up the gas tank without being asked. And maybe that's why she never thought I'd leave. She thought I was furniture. Permanent. Predictable. But I was paying attention the whole time. The story doesn't begin with a fight. No shattered plates. No screaming in the driveway. It started the day I told her I wanted to open a coffee shop. Yeah, it sounds simple. But to me, it wasn't. I'd spent 12 years working in municipal logistics for the city. Spreadsheets, contracts, routine. It paid the bills, but it never stirred anything in me. And after losing my brother last fall, he was 38, died from an aneurysm out of nowhere, I started reevaluating everything. So one quiet Tuesday, I looked at Rosalind, my wife of 9 years, and I said, I think I want to start over. I want to build something of my own. Maybe a coffee place downtown. Simple, cozy. Just mine. She blinked once, then laughed. I don't mean chuckled, I mean laughed. Loud, sharp, cruel. You? A coffee shop? With what money? Who's gonna come to Warren's little lattes? She sneered, as glued to her phone as her thumb scrolled Instagram. You're not a risk taker. You're barely a talker. She didn't even look up. That night, I sat awake in bed long after she fell asleep. I counted every light snore, every toss of her arm over my side of the mattress, and I knew I didn't matter to her anymore. She used to text me songs that reminded her of me. Now I was lucky if she texted at all. Still, I didn't leave. Not yet. A week later, she told me she'd be going on a girls' trip to Asheville. Supposedly hiking, wineries, the usual spa nonsense. I smiled and helped her pack. Folded her yoga pants. Zipped up her pink luggage. Kissed her on the cheek at 5:45 a.m. before she Ubered to the airport. And then I started the clock. I had 96 hours. You see, the coffee shop wasn't just a dream. While she mocked me, I'd already met with a small business consultant. I had a location lined up, permits filed, and savings scraped together that she never knew about, because she never asked. The morning after she left, I moved with military precision. I called in favors. Friends I hadn't spoken to in years showed up in trucks. Every box was labeled. Every drawer cleared. I emptied the joint accounts, half, legally mine. I forwarded my mail, canceled subscriptions, shut down utilities. By midnight, I was gone. But I didn't just vanish from the house. I vanished from her world. No notes, no texts, no dramatic voicemail. I changed my number, blocked her entire friend group, even her family, who probably never liked me anyway. The only thing I left behind was a manila folder taped to the fridge. Inside was a single Polaroid. It was from 3 months ago. Her, sitting in a booth at some bar in Charlotte, smiling wide at a man whose hand was far too familiar with her thigh. She never knew I was across the room. She never knew I saw everything. But that's just the beginning of this story. Because as of this morning, she finally found me. And what she wants now. That's the part no one's ready for. It was around 10:13 a.m. when I saw the email. No subject line. No name. Just a blank sender ID and a single sentence in the body. Did you really think you could just disappear? I stared at the screen for a long time. I hadn't used that inbox in weeks, but I kept it open on my laptop out of habit. Something about that message felt, not angry, but disoriented. Like someone reaching into darkness and hoping to grab hold of something solid. It had been 26 days since I left. 26 days of silence. No calls. No social media. Not a single peep from Rosalind or anyone in her orbit. At first, I expected the barrage, the frantic texts, the teary voicemails, the "how could you?" rage fits. But they never came. That silence was louder than any screaming match we'd ever had. I had started over in a tiny town about 90 minutes south. Quiet place, brick buildings, families that waved at strangers. I rented a small duplex near a lake. The coffee shop was in motion. I'd already signed the lease on a storefront next to an old barber shop. Locals were curious. Friendly. I went by Warren D. Now, people called me the city guy with the French press obsession. It was peaceful. But make no mistake, I wasn't at peace. Every time the wind rustled through the trees outside my window, I braced for headlights in my driveway. When a car slowed down on the street, I watched from behind curtains. I didn't feel guilt. I felt anticipation. Because I knew eventually Rosalind would come looking. What I didn't expect was how she'd find me. 3 hours after that email, A second message came through, this time with a screenshot. It was my new coffee shop's Instagram page. I hadn't even made it myself. My barista in training, a local college kid named Maya, had set it up to start building hype. It had fewer than 30 followers. But somehow, Rosalind had found it. Through what? A cousin's cousin? A tag post? Someone who recognized my last name from the LLC registration? I'll never know. But there she was. And I knew what was coming next. That night, I didn't sleep. I just sat in the armchair by the window, staring out at the driveway. At 7:24 a.m., a black Audi I hadn't seen in over a month pulled up and parked halfway on the curb. She got out. Same designer coat. Same $900 boots I bought her for our 6th anniversary. Same stiff, calculated walk. But her face wasn't the same. It wasn't mascara streaks and fury. It was something else. Cold. Measured. Like she'd rehearsed whatever she was about to say 100 times in the mirror. I didn't open the door. She didn't knock. She just stood there for a minute, then reached into her purse, pulled out a white envelope, and placed it on the welcome mat. Then she turned and walked away without a word. I waited until the taillights disappeared down the hill. Then I picked it up. Inside was a handwritten letter, 3 pages long. Her handwriting was shaky, but not panicked. Controlled. The first line read, "You were never supposed to leave before I was done." I read that line at least 6 times before I could move on. The rest was worse. She admitted the man in the bar photo was real. His name was Trevor, a married consultant who lived in Atlanta. She said she didn't love him, but he made her feel awake again. She called it a phase. Said I was too calm, too easy to ignore. That she'd planned to come clean after the trip. That she needed one last adventure before deciding if I was still what she wanted. One last adventure. Like I was some old pair of shoes she couldn't decide to donate or keep. But the last paragraph? That's what did it. She wrote, "You took the money. You took your things. But you forgot one thing. I know who you really are. And the world you're hiding in? It won't stay hidden forever." That wasn't a threat. That was a promise. And it was only the beginning. I read the letter 3 more times before finally setting it down on the counter next to my keys. My hands weren't shaking, but my thoughts were spinning like a wheel that had come unhinged. I wasn't angry, not in the way people expect. There was no urge to scream, no bitterness in my chest. What I felt was something colder, sharper, like the kind of awareness that comes seconds before a storm. She knew where I was now. And more than that, she had made it clear this wasn't the end for her. It was the start of something else. I didn't leave town because I was afraid. I left because I wanted a life with air in it. A life where I could breathe again. The house we'd shared was beautiful. Yes, granite countertops, walk-in closets, heated floors in the bathroom. But it hadn't felt like home in years. It was a showroom where I lived as a placeholder. The warmth had leaked out over time, like a slow drain. Until eventually, I was just another item on her shelf. And yet, that letter, that smug last line, it wasn't desperation. It was strategy. That night, I checked the shop's Instagram page. She had followed it under a burner account. No profile picture, no posts, just a single follower. Me. I blocked it. I went through the follower list and removed anyone who seemed remotely connected to her or her social circle. I wasn't taking chances. But the next morning, the whispers started. Maya, my barista, came into the shop early, her face tight with discomfort. "Warren, did you see this?" She slid her phone across the counter. It was a screenshot of a Facebook post from a local community group. Someone had uploaded a photo of me, taken just outside the shop a few days earlier. The caption? "New to town and already breaking up marriages. Beware the quiet ones." The comments were vicious. I scrolled in silence. Words like homewrecker, manipulator, liar flew freely. A few people claimed I had abandoned my wife in the middle of her cancer scare. What? Others said I had stolen money from our joint business. What business? Rosalind had planted stories. And worse, people were believing them. She hadn't just tracked me down. She'd come to ruin my fresh start. I didn't explain myself. Not to Maya. Not to anyone. I told her to ignore it and focus on prepping the espresso station. But as I looked around the shop, new light bulbs still flickering slightly, smell of wood polish lingering in the air, I felt a deep, rattling fury start to settle under my ribs. She didn't want me back. She wanted control. Even from a distance, Rosalind had figured out how to pull strings. She'd weaponized sympathy, guilt, confusion. She knew how to build narratives and twist facts until even I doubted the truth I had lived. I didn't run, though. I went to work every day. Opened the doors. Served the regulars. Handed out samples at the farmer's market. And when I got home, I wrote everything down. Every lie. Every threat. Every fake post and burner account. I documented everything. Because something told me this wouldn't end with rumors. And I was right. Exactly 1 week later, I walked into the shop at 6:47 a.m. to find the front window shattered. Glass was everywhere. The register was gone. Chairs overturned. A single word was spray-painted across the counter in thick red letters. Cheater. I didn't need to guess who did it. Or at least, who sent someone to. That was the moment I realized Rosalind wasn't unraveling, she was escalating. And if I didn't act soon, she wasn't just going to burn down my business. She was coming for me. The police were calm, professional, and completely unhelpful. Looks like vandalism. Could have been teenagers. You'd be surprised how often this happens, the officer said as he jotted meaningless notes on a clipboard, barely looking at the spray-painted counter. The shattered window crunched under his boots. I wanted to scream. Teenagers don't write in permanent marker with perfect spelling at 6:45 in the morning. But I didn't say anything. Instead, I filed the report, swept up the glass, and made a few calls. Maya showed up around 9, stunned silent when she saw the damage. I told her to go home. She didn't argue. By noon, I was in my living room with all the curtains drawn and my laptop open. I started cross-referencing names I remembered from Rosalind's side of the wedding guest list. I pulled up every LinkedIn profile, every city record I could find. My hunch was that she hadn't come down here herself, not yet. She had sent someone. A cousin maybe. An ex-colleague. Someone she could manipulate and discard if the heat came on. The worst part? I wasn't even sure why. She wasn't asking for me to come home. She wasn't threatening to expose a secret or push me into reconciliation. There were no tearful pleas. No, I miss you texts. It was just quiet, surgical damage. She didn't want me back. She wanted me small. And that scared me more than any affair ever could. Later that week, I hired a private investigator. His name was Victor Ryland, and he looked like a man who hadn't blinked in a decade. Ex-military, gray buzz cut, always wore black. I didn't know anyone in town, but I found him through a mutual contact of someone who had quietly gone through a divorce with a woman just like Rosalind. Vindictive, resourceful, dangerous. Victor didn't flinch when I told him everything. You're not the first, he said. You won't be the last. But we'll get ahead of this. He started digging. Phone records, flight manifests, financial trails. Meanwhile, I stayed quiet. Replaced the window. Painted over the graffiti. Reopened the shop like nothing happened. The town had already whispered enough. No use fueling it. But inside, I was watching every shadow. Then one afternoon, Victor called. She's coming down. I was sitting on the back steps of the shop, sipping burnt coffee and trying to feel human again when his voice hit my ear like a lightning strike. She booked a car rental from Charlotte Airport, under her maiden name. Arrives Friday night. Staying at a bed and breakfast 20 minutes from your shop. Alone. He paused. She's not here to talk. I didn't ask how he knew that. I just believed him. Because I knew Rosalind too. She wasn't the type to show up for closure. She was coming for something else. Maybe leverage. Maybe documentation. Maybe some twisted idea of revenge. Or maybe it was about power. So I made a plan. I stayed late Thursday night. I moved files, passwords, backup logs, and anything traceable from my shop's network. I cleared my apartment of anything personal, no journals, no receipts, nothing she could twist. I transferred ownership of the coffee shop's lease into a holding company I had set up months ago under a different name. Then I left one thing behind. On the counter, in the same spot she'd once left her envelope, I placed a single item, a photo. It was of Rosalind and Trevor, taken by a private eye back in January. They were outside a hotel. She was holding his hand and laughing. Her wedding ring wasn't on. On the back of the photo, I'd written. I kept quiet. Don't make me loud. Then I locked the door, left the key under the mat, and vanished again. I had already arranged everything with Victor, an empty cabin about an hour into the mountains, off the grid, no internet, no neighbors. Just space and quiet. Because if Rosalind really thought she was playing chess, she was about to realize I wasn't even on the board anymore. The silence out in those mountains was almost unnatural. It was the kind of silence that feels like it's watching you back, deep, slow, and heavy. No passing cars, no buzzing phones, no neighbors talking through the walls. Just the occasional rustle of wine through the pine trees and the distant hoot of an owl. The kind of quiet that forces you to hear your own thoughts whether you want to or not. I spent the first night in that cabin staring at the ceiling, listening to the creak of the old beams above me. Victor had set the place up in advance, stocked fridge, prepaid flip phone, even a fire going in the hearth. He told me not to worry. But the thing about people like Rosalind is, they don't stop when you go quiet. They get louder. Louder until they hear something break. By Saturday morning, she had arrived at the shop. I knew this not because she called. I'd already disconnected everything, but because Victor was parked a block away in an old beige pickup that blended into the town like rust. He called me on the burner. "She's there," he said. Spent 20 minutes just standing in the doorway. Didn't even touch the photo. Just stared at it. "Anyone with her?" "No. But she's not acting like someone who came to say sorry." Later, he sent me a photo. Rosalind standing inside the shop, arms folded, expression unreadable. The place was spotless, no sign of the break-in weeks before. But somehow, with her there, it looked darker. Like her presence dragged the light out of the walls. Victor waited. She didn't cry. She didn't take anything. She just walked around, slowly, like a buyer examining a house she didn't want to live in but still needed to claim. Then she left, got into the Audi, drove straight back to the B&B. But that wasn't the end of it. That night, the shop's Instagram lit up again. 3 new burner accounts, all commenting under old posts with strange, cryptic remarks. "Liar. Thief. You'll answer for what you did." Victor scrubbed them quickly, but the damage wasn't the point. It wasn't about public humiliation anymore. She was signaling something, like a cat playing with a mouse that had already stopped running. I knew I couldn't stay in hiding forever. I didn't want to live in a cabin with shadows for company. But I also knew that returning without a plan would give her exactly what she wanted. Proof that she could smoke me out, shake me down, make me react. And then, just as Victor and I started drafting legal options, restraining order, harassment claims, digital forensics, we got a message that changed everything. He called me on the burner at 2:12 a.m., voice low but urgent. "She's meeting with a lawyer. Tomorrow. Local firm, Middleton and Crane." "For what?" "No idea. But it's not divorce. You're already gone. It's something else." My guy overheard her say, "He's hiding more than he admits." That hit me hard. Not because she was wrong, but because she wasn't talking about cheating anymore. She wasn't just punishing me for leaving. She wanted to dig into my finances, my history, my intentions. Maybe she thought I had another woman. Maybe she believed I had assets tucked away. Or maybe she was afraid I had dirt on her, enough to flip her carefully crafted world upside down. Whatever it was, this wasn't about heartbreak. It was about control. That next morning, Victor and I met in person at a diner 2 towns over. He slid a manila folder across the table. Inside were documents, screenshots of her communication with an attorney, bank activity under her maiden name, even a travel itinerary back to Atlanta for next week. "She's not staying long," Victor said. "She's going back to her real life. This little detour? It's just cleanup for her." I looked at him. "And what if I don't let her clean anything up?" He leaned back. I steady. "Then you better be ready to get dirty." So that's when I decided I wasn't going back to the shadows. Not anymore. She wanted to come into my new life and scatter everything I built? Fine. Then she'd get the full truth. I'd already kept silent about one of the most explosive things I knew. A detail she never expected me to discover. But now it was time to bring that into the light. Because while she was busy trying to expose me, she forgot I was holding something that could destroy her. 2 weeks before Rosalind ever stepped foot in my new town, I had uncovered something that made my stomach turn. I hadn't acted on it at the time because, honestly, I was still trying to convince myself I could walk away clean. That maybe if I just disappeared, she'd get bored and let me fade out like an unfinished argument. But she wasn't the type to leave things unsaid. And I wasn't the type to be threatened into silence. The discovery started as a coincidence. While transferring the last of our old financial records from a shared cloud account, I found a folder mislabeled as home renovation quotes. It didn't raise alarms until I noticed the timestamps. Some were dated long before we even talked about remodeling. I opened the files expecting contractor PDFs. Instead, I found something else entirely. Hidden inside were scanned pages from a different bank account, one I never knew existed. The account had been active for 3 years, registered under her maiden name, based in Georgia. The transfers were small, spaced out, $800 here, $1,200 there. But they added up. And the source? A series of payments from a consulting firm that didn't actually exist on paper. No employees. No online presence. Just a mailbox drop address and a bank routing number. At first, I assumed it was an affair cover. Hush money. A lover playing sugar daddy. But the more I dug, the worse it looked. Because tucked among those transfers were occasional wire payments labeled contracting fees. One of them came just days before our joint investment into a marketing project I believed she had organized through her company. It dawned on me slowly. She had used my name, my credit, and my trust to funnel thousands of dollars through a shell account, and I signed off on every transaction because she forged my digital signature. And then it hit me. She wasn't just hiding a man. She was laundering money. I sat alone in the cabin with the fire low and a printout of every transaction scattered across the floor. I hadn't told Victor yet. I hadn't told anyone. Because the moment I did, it would no longer be a personal war. It would become legal. It would become federal. But now that she was pushing this, dragging my name through town, hinting at secrets, trying to bait me into reacting, now it was time to strike back. The next day, I met with Victor again, this time with more than just suspicions. I handed him a flash drive. Everything you need, I said. Dates, amounts, routing numbers, fraud. And if I'm right, she's been doing it with her old boss, the one she claims she barely talks to now. Victor stared at the screen. You realize this opens a whole new door, right? This isn't revenge anymore. This is evidence. I know, I said, but she stepped over the line the second she brought fire to my door. Victor took the drive, stood, and left without another word. That's how I knew he respected it. No theatrics. No questions. Just action. In the meantime, I made one more move of my own. I wrote her a letter. Just one page. No venom, no rage. Just truth. Rosalind, you came to find me, and you succeeded. But what you didn't count on was what I found. While you were out having your one last adventure, I uncovered the part of you you never wanted anyone to see, not even yourself. I know about the account, the signatures, the payments. I've stayed silent because I didn't want to burn down what we built. I thought maybe if I gave you space, you'd let me go with some dignity. But I see now, that's not who you are. You only understand power when it's taken from you. So consider this my only response. From here on, your story doesn't belong to you anymore. I won't threaten you. I won't expose you out of malice. But I'll protect myself with everything I've got. Whatever you're looking for in me, you won't find it. That man's already gone. I didn't sign it. I mailed it anonymously from 2 towns away. And then, I waited. Because the match had been struck. And Rosalind was about to learn what it felt like to lose control, not by force, not by rage, but by something far scarier. The truth she buried finally crawling into the light. It took 4 days. 4 days of silence. 4 days of waiting, wondering which version of Rosalind would show up next. I imagined all of them. The furious one. The clever manipulator. The frightened girl hiding behind her lawyer's expensive smile. Or maybe the version she used on strangers, the golden one, charming and tragic, always the victim, always one glance away from a tear. I didn't know which mask she'd pick, but I knew the performance was coming. The letter must have landed by Tuesday. By Wednesday morning, Victor called. You'll want to sit down for this. He didn't sound like himself. No edge. No humor. Just flat, measured tone. The kind of voice that knows you're about to feel the floor shift under you. She's not trying to clear her name, he said. She's preparing to vanish. What do you mean? I mean Rosalind closed the account, the big one you found. She filed to dissolve her limited partnership with her former employer, emptied a trust under her aunt's name in Delaware, and filed a forwarding address with the post office to an apartment complex in Lisbon, Portugal. I asked, not because I didn't believe it, but because saying it out loud helped it make sense. Yup. Flight booked. End of the week. I stood still, coffee cup halfway to my lips. Why the hell would she run if she doesn't think she's guilty? Victor exhaled. That's the thing, Warren. People like Rosalind don't wait to be accused. They move the pieces before the board gets flipped. For the first time since this all began, I sat down and let the idea settle that this woman, this person I had married, loved, defended to my friends, trusted with my life, was not only capable of betrayal, but capable of escape. She wasn't here to win. She was here to erase the game before anyone realized it had been rigged from the start. But she'd made one mistake. She thought I still wanted revenge. I didn't. What I wanted was clarity. Accountability. Something real. Something that stripped away the fog and left behind only the core of what had happened. But now? Now it wasn't just about me. It was about how many others she had stepped on, lied to, and manipulated to build the hollow empire she was trying to flee. And then, just when I thought the story couldn't spiral any further, Victor uncovered the final thread. "There's a man," he said. "A real one this time. Not Trevor." I thought Trevor was the guy? Not even close. Trevor was a placeholder. The guy she's been funneling money with? His name's Anthony Seaver. CPA. Early 40s. Divorced twice. Lives between Boston and Charleston. Works with offshore clients. Guess who helped her set up the shell company in the first place? I said nothing. Victor continued. He was in Portugal last month. She's joining him. This was never about a girl's trip. Never about being unhappy. It was a scheme. One that probably started while you were still paying off her student loans. I hung up the phone and sat in the middle of the cabin floor, surrounded by receipts, folders, photos, flash drives. The kind of evidence that could choke a courtroom. I realized in that moment that Rosalind hadn't just been unfaithful. She had rewritten her entire life behind my back, using my name, my time, my patience, and maybe worst of all, my silence. So I made a final decision. That night, I composed a message. Not for her. For the authorities. I sent every file to an anonymous legal tip line tied to interstate financial crimes. I uploaded documents, communications, tax statements, shell routing logs, and attached a signed affidavit. I left out nothing. I didn't accuse. I just presented facts. All of it traceable. All of it backed up. I didn't need to destroy her. I just needed her to be seen. Because I knew Rosalind's worst fear wasn't being caught. It was being exposed, without the ability to control the narrative. By the time the sun rose the next morning, I had already wiped my devices and forwarded everything to Victor's backup server. And then I did something I never thought I'd do. I drove back to town, not to confront her, but to stand in my own story. When I walked into the coffee shop that afternoon, the place was warm with light and conversation. Maya looked up from behind the counter, wide-eyed. "You're back." I smiled. A small one, but real. "Yeah," I said. "And this time, I'm staying." Because I had stopped running from Rosalind, and she just started running from herself. I didn't expect peace to come wrapped in laughter and the hiss of an espresso machine, but somehow, that's exactly what it sounded like. A week after I returned to town, the coffee shop was buzzing again. Locals filtered in every morning like clockwork, old men in worn flannel, college kids with earbuds, moms juggling strollers, and chai lattes. They didn't care about the rumors anymore. They cared about the scones, the playlists, the way Maya remembered everyone's name. The scandal had burned fast and cold, and when no fuel remained, it simply died out. Victor stayed on, quietly watching the edges of everything, making sure no embers caught fire again. As for Rosalind, she never returned. 2 weeks after she left the country, Victor confirmed what we both suspected. Federal investigators had begun looking into the paper trail. Quietly, discreetly. No headlines. No arrests. But she knew. We both did. Somewhere out there, Rosalind was looking over her shoulder in a city where she thought she'd finally be free of consequences. But I wasn't thinking about her anymore. Not because I forgave her, but because forgiveness wasn't necessary for release. She had taken so much from me, years of trust, emotional space, even parts of my identity. But what she never understood, and never will, is that you can't steal from someone who's already moved on. And I had. Not all at once. Not with dramatic declarations or sudden reinventions. It was smaller. Simpler. It started with planting herbs in little pots on the back porch. It continued in the quiet hours before the shop opened, when I brewed the first pot of coffee and sat in that warm silence with nothing but my thoughts, and for once, they didn't claw at me. Eventually, I took off my wedding band. Not in anger. Not as a symbol of loss. Just a quiet acknowledgement that the story had ended. And the next chapter wasn't waiting to be written. It was already happening. I started journaling again. I'd stopped during the final years of our marriage, too exhausted to reflect on a life that didn't feel like mine anymore. But now, each page felt lighter. More honest. Some days I wrote about nothing, just the color of the sky, or a joke a customer told me. Other days, I wrote about her. Not with bitterness. Just with clarity. And then one morning, about a month after I settled back into town, something happened that I never saw coming. Maya walked over while I was restocking pastries and said, "Hey, that woman who's been coming in every Thursday morning?" She asked if you were single. I blinked. "What woman?" She smirked. "Tall. Red scarf. Glasses. Reads murder mysteries and always tips too much. You really don't notice anything outside that espresso machine, do you?" I laughed, genuinely, freely. The kind of laugh I hadn't felt in years. I guess I've been a little busy rebuilding, I said. Maya nudged my shoulder. Well, she seems patient. I didn't do anything right away. I didn't chase, didn't rush, didn't make it a moment bigger than it needed to be. But the following Thursday, I brought over her order personally. Black coffee, 2 sugars, right? I asked. She looked up, smiled, and nodded. Right, she said. You remembered. And that was all it was. A beginning. A gentle, honest beginning. Because in the end, Rosalind didn't destroy me. She freed me. And while she ran from the truth, I learned how to stand in mine and build something real from the ashes. Something warm. Something honest. Something mine.